want to bring you back to the board here for a moment to refer back to the discussion this morning. We really just touched on the high points this morning. I posed the question, is this Charles Wheeling, or is what goes around, in the brain Charles Wheeling? And the answer is yes. All right. This is really important because Jesus had to become one in the flesh with us. Why? If we were not going to be flesh on the other side, then there would have been no real purpose, maybe dying, for Jesus to take on the flesh. Now, Jesus said to Nicodemus, you have to be born again. And Nicodemus couldn't get that worked out, and he said, I just don't understand how you can go back into the womb and be born again. Well, here's how you work it out, Nicodemus. Are you and I going to have a body, flesh? I didn't say flesh and blood. I said, are we going to have flesh on the other side? And the answer is, how do we know this? What was Jesus composed of when He came up in the resurrection? Come on, He showed Himself to His disciples, and they said, it's a ghost. And He said, no, come here. He said, spirit hath not what? No, not flesh and blood. Flesh and bone, as you see me have. Well, what happened to His blood? Look, folks, there are two kinds of saints the day Jesus appears in the clouds of heaven. There are those who are dead, waiting to be resurrected, and there are those who are alive. What happens to those who are alive? Talking about the flesh. The flesh. It's changed in a moment. So this flesh is not going to heaven. Yahoo. Okay? This flesh is not going to heaven. We need new bodies. We're going to have that. But besides new bodies, what else was corrupted with sin? At least yours. I don't know about mine, but at least yours. Okay? What else is corrupted? So what is the promise? We'll be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. We will have new bodies, but what about spirit? I will write my law where? Come on. We have to be born again of water and the Spirit. Make any sense? That's a soul is two things, remember. You got to have the body, and you got to have the Spirit. We're going to have the body, we're going to have the Spirit, but we're not going to have the blood, which is the transfer agent between the breath and the body. I'm looking at you. Some of you ate too much, some of you didn't sleep long enough. Come on. Why don't we have any blood on the other side?
We won't need it. Because it was shed on the cross. The life is in the blood. The life is in the blood.
Thank you. The life is the Spirit. The life is in the blood. We no longer need the blood to transfer the Spirit power of God to have life. We have the Spirit of God dwelling within us.
Amen. Amen.
That's the new covenant relationship. All right? We haven't arrived there yet. We have the promise. We have the faith. We have the hope. It's not here yet. It has to do with what takes place in the judgment. And what takes place in the judgment is not simply they're going to find Jesus a good man. I want to bring you here. This is what so many people really haven't seen yet. It appears in Bible prophecy that this time of the end is approximately 7 years in duration. Now, some folk who believe in the rapture call this the tribulation period. And they think they're going to be gone and don't worry about it. because I'm not here. I'm such a nice person. Prophetically, this time of the end is divided. I shared just briefly with you this morning, even Ellen White divides it in her conversation. There's a earlier little time of trouble, and then there's a great time of trouble. See? What we really need to see and understand is that this is the new world order on the way to the one world order. The one world order is 3.5 years, 42 months. We need to understand this. These are the measured days, right here. Right here. Well, why aren't these measured? Because God has foretold in His Word that He's going to change the times and the seasons. There's a Hebrew word at work here. It's called the moed. And it's translated, typically translated, times and seasons. So tell me what a time is. It's a year. Tell me what a season is.
4 months. 3 months. 4 months. 6 months. 4 months.
4 parts of a year.
Right. 4 months.
Seasons.
You're right.
Summer, fall, winter, spring.
Gotcha.
All right? God didn't say He was going to change the times, seasons, and days. But He's going to. It's going to be affected. Why? When God called Moses out of retirement and He said, go down and tell Pharaoh, and then tell my people, and now they go on a march out into the desert. They're gone for 3 months, 90 days, and God says to Moses, come up in the mountain. So He gives Moses the blueprint for the sanctuary. The blueprint was in 2 parts. 1, the building itself, and 2, the moed, the times in the sanctuary. All right? These are the times I will visit you. So much could be said right there. Now, in the days of Moses, a year was 360 days. This has been documented historically. This has been documented worldwide. That means we go around the sun in almost a perfect orbit, 360 days, 360 degrees, and we're around. All right? In 701, 702 BC, as best it can be determined, in the days of Hezekiah, Isaiah the resident prophet, something happened to the planet. We've discussed it. We'll say more about it this afternoon, but something happened, and it appears there was a flyby. I should have drawn it on the outside of our orbit around the sun. There was a flyby. An object came so near planet Earth that and had enough mass that it actually affected our orbital period. And our orbit was ellipsed now, no longer perfectly circular, but it's now 365 and a quarter days. It still is. This is the orbit we presently enjoy, if there's any enjoyment in it. Well, what's the problem? Well, Moses and the Exodus was at 1440 BC, thereabouts. Hezekiah is at 702, 701 BC. That's when the clock was changed. That's when the calendar was changed. Daniel comes along, 605 BC, 100 years after Hezekiah. And Gabriel and the Lord and appear to Daniel repeatedly. And Daniel, see this and write about it. Write it down. And Daniel says, I don't understand it. Next vision. I don't understand it. Next vision. I don't understand it. You come to the last chapter, chapter 12 of the book of Daniel, and Daniel says, I don't understand it. And finally, the angel says to him, that's because it's not for you to understand. It's for the time of the... Ooh. Well, why should that be of interest to you and me? Because all of Daniel's visions are set in sanctuary typology, please listen, and sanctuary time. A calendar of 360 days a year, not 365 and a quarter days a year. Art thou listening? This won't work. Didn't work for the pioneers. Doesn't work for the present. But in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel tells King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, could not the wise men, soothsayers, magicians, and astrologers show the king the dream? No, but there's a God in heaven that revealeth secrets and maketh known to the king what shall be in the latter days. Just a few verses before, 6, 7, 8 verses before. For God will change the times and the... Look, for God will change the times and the seasons. We have to change the calendar for the book of Daniel to be opened, for the times in the visions and in the sanctuary to work out. I propose it happens right here. Probably a flyby on the inside of our orbit around the sun, which would have a tendency to retrograde our orbit. And if you can't buy that, 3 times the conversation of Jesus with his disciples is recorded 3 times. Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. Matthew borrowed from Mark. Mark wrote it first. Then Matthew took his and wrote it down, put his name on it. And then Luke came along afterward, an investigator. And he went around asking all the witnesses he could and these people who were around, what do you remember? And he's writing it down. And he has all the same words of Matthew and Mark, except he adds one. Luke 21 and verse 11. Famine, pestilence, earthquake. And Jesus said, and fearful sights shall there be in the heavens. All these are the beginning. Now watch. All of this is to set you up in the sanctuary, in the moed of the sanctuary. There is one ultimate time, one ultimate moed. There is one final, there is one ED in the sanctuary. And it's called So if I were you, I would count on Jesus arriving at Jubilee. Right? Yeah. If it's not, it will be. Let's put it that way. Now, why should that be of interest to you and me? Once upon a time, not too many decades ago, there was a man born in Russia, Russian-born, Nikolai Kondrativ. And Kondrativ would grow up and he would become a highly respected economist. He was an economic historian. And he did years and years and years and years and years and years of research on the economy of nations around the world through hundreds of years. And Kondrativ discovered something. When I first read this, it was in something like the Wall Street Journal or whatever, and they had absolutely no tie or connection to the Bible at all. They were just talking about Kondrativ and the amazing things he discovered. And okay? So this is what Kondrativ really brought, the point he brought us to. He said that there's a run-up in an economic cycle. Things are drifting for a while, and then all of a sudden we come to this great period of growth, and expansion. Can be within a nation, can be among nations, can be whatever. Okay? And there is this pinnacle, this point where there's a sudden break. You can call it December 2008 if you want to. He said things will drop for a while. And then there will be this plateau, this period that things appear to just kind of hold on and drift and hold on and drift, and people say, oh, it's going to get better, and then we're going to come out of it. And then there is, it's over Niagara in a barrel. This is called a depression. And when you see this, you're going to say, what? You see the crash in 1929? That was not the bottom of the depression. That was the ing. Listening? The bottom of the depression would not be reached for 3.5 years. This country went through what is termed historically the Great Depression. All the industrialized nations were involved. Okay? The Great Depression. There would be this long period of, quotes, restoration, a collapse. They have to get rid of the debt. And we're going to start again. Here's the point you don't want to miss. Kondratyv discovered that the cycle repeated approximately every 54 years. And when I read that, I said, what in the world? God told the children of Israel, you have to wipe out all debt every what? 50 years. Every 50 years you have to wipe out all debt, and you've got to start again. So if they had followed God's formula, this would never happen. You're following? We had the crash of 29. We want to add 54 years to that, thereabouts. It would bring us to 81, 82, 83. And where were we? We were coming out of the Carter administration, in which it was, and of course he gets blamed for all of it, whoever the guy is, who has almost nothing to do with it, any of them. And Ronald Reagan comes to the White House. Now the economy should have tanked under Reagan, and it came that close. Right there. He comes in 80. 81, 82, it's looking bad. And Reagan proposes we do these dramatic tax cuts. And we get this stimulus from the Federal Reserve. He commanded the Federal Reserve. Go back and check all of this out, folks. And so we should have had this correction right here in 81, 82. But instead, human beings got into the middle of it, like Sarah and Hagar. All right? And what they did was stall this, so that this is the one we're headed for right now. We've run out of rabbits in the hat. Do you folk listen to the news? I mean, these are the very words. There are no more tricks. Do you understand what the $600 billion is that Bernanke is writing the check for? Do you understand what it is? The United States has, quotes, license to print money. It's the Federal Reserve that does it. But we have license to print money when anybody else on the planet or American citizens buy U.S. Treasury bonds or U.S. Treasury bills, and then they print money according to our credit line. Well, the Chinese have said, hang it up, boys, we're not buying anymore. And the Saudis have said, forget about it. And this week, yesterday and today. South Korea is announcing to the United States, we're not buying any more of your debt. And the Japanese are announcing, we're not buying any more of your debt. And the United States is out of rabbits and actually out of hats. Okay? And the 600 billion is referred to as the QE. That's quantitative easing. What are they trying to do? Listen, folk. Most of you have been alive for the last 10 years. Some of you I'm not sure about, but most of you. What you saw, what you experienced, and what you and I were witnesses to was every day or every other day, you have qualified for a credit card. And your credit line is. And the banks were advertising, even coming out or calling you and saying, you can have a home equity credit line. You can borrow against your equity. It's called an equity loan. Equity line. All right? Do you really think for a moment that the banks and the credit card people out there just suddenly thought up, oh, let's just go out and loan everybody all this money? Here, friends at the table back here telling me that, you know, we watched all of this. We got friends in L.A., bought a house, $600,000 house, and didn't even have a job. Do you really think that all of this was done with nobody knowing what was going on? Without someone telling the banks, loan money, print money, put money into. Why did we do that? Why was that done? To bring this nation down. Well, why would anybody want to bring this nation down? Oh, how naive we are. All the folk in the United States, including the illegals, constitute maybe 6-7% of the world's population. 6 to 7%. We purchase 80+% of the world's goods through Walmart. All this money that went in ran up all of this production. Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, China, Mexico. Okay? What are we doing? Spreading the wealth around. We're spreading the wealth around. It's not fair for all you Americans to have 3 cars in the driveway when we have none. This is a take down America by a jealous, envious, greedy world. We're talking about the economy. Now let's get below the surface, shall we? The New World Order has a chief architect known as the Vatican. The Vatican is the chief architect of the New World Order. Did you see the globe? One at the Vatican and one at the UN, and none else on the planet? Most folk just, they don't live in this, you know, listen, we're going to have the President of the United States. We're going to have the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Japan and the China and the whatever, and we're all going to come together. Let me ask you something. How long has the United States of America been a nation? 200 years. 200 years. Right? Well, Great Britain's been around a long time. Tell me how long Great Britain has been Great Britain. Oh, we might squeeze 1,000 out if we really try. Right? Most empires come and go on the planet in about 200 years. Rome kind of broke that mold and went a little longer, but are you listening? So we have the kings of the earth, and we have this woman. Tell me how long this woman has been around.
2,000 years, more or less.
1, 2, 3 zeros. There is no nation. There is no kingdom. There is no entity. There is no power on the planet who can match her. And if you think the nations don't know it, she whispers in their ears. It's called sweet talk. You can read all about it in Revelation 17. It's called pillow talk. I'm asking you to see this and understand that we're headed here. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it. If all of us voted together, we can't change it. It's coming. Now, what the globalists are all about is they are bright, intelligent men. You heard him talk about the Journal Current Affairs and so forth for the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. I was a subscriber for 3 years to Current Affairs. I wanted to read for myself personally and follow. If you get on the inside, it's not difficult at all to find out what's going on. These are intelligent people. These are bright people. These are Rhodes Scholars people. These people know history. And they know that when these kinds of times come right here, if you don't have a handle on it, it's not blood in the street. It's blood in the streets. That governments come down. That millions of people die. And on and on and on and on. Okay? Hitler and Stalin and Mao Zedong tried to jump into the middle of this. Hitler killed 57 million. Stalin killed 61 and Mao Zedong 75 plus. See, bright, intelligent people who know history know that we, the planet, is approaching. And they are trying to put together a plan, a system, anything to bring us down gently and take us back up. They're not, quotes, evil people. But they don't understand who the evil one is behind the crisis. Who uses a crisis to his advantage. Does this make any sense to you? Amen. They don't know it, and you and I cannot change it. Ellen White makes a statement that I find beyond fascinating. She talks about when this final crisis comes, and she says it's during this time that the device of Satan will be perfected. Okay? You and I are knocking on the door of perfect evil. Something the world has never seen. That's what Jesus told Daniel, chapter 12, verse 1, 2, and 3. The world's never seen anything like it. If the world's never seen it, all those worlds have never seen it. And here we are, you and me and us. And all the other folks around us, whether they know it or not. You and I have advanced knowledge. We have been warned of this time. We have been told to make ready for this time. Well, what can I do about it? You can't beat City Hall. No. It's not about beating City Hall. Okay? The only defense we have is exactly what we've been told. It's the only defense Jesus had. He didn't use swords. He didn't use armies. He used spirit law. When the enemy came to him to tempt him, and one of the great temptations was money, the wealth of the world. His only defense was, it is written. That's the only defense we have, you and I. It's the only thing we have other than the wisdom and the warnings that we have been given as a people. We're not talking about Baptists and Methodist Christians and fine folks out there. Christians, love the Lord. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a people who have been given information because they have a specific work to do. Let me give you an example. 2 or 3 weeks ago, a friend in the office brings me a copy of a recent release in the Review and Herald. You know, your monthly magazine. He said, "Did you see this?" I said, "No, I haven't seen it." And I read it, and kind of took the steam out of me. And what it says is that the Review and Herald is in trouble. The Review and Herald. We're not talking about the paper. We're talking about the press. They're in trouble. And well, there are reasons. Now, knowing what was revealed to us as a people, and knowing that soon all schools among us will be closed, every line of work, save one. Save one. Which one is that? The printed page. Now, if I had that warning, if I had that enlightenment, and I am, up there voting, and my vote really counts, I would say, you know what, guys? The hospital's just going to have to tough it. And you know what, guys? The academies and they're going to have to tough it. But we're not going to let the publishing house go. And that's what's about to happen. If somebody who says they believe in the spirit of prophecy. This is really disgusting to me. You forgive me, but I can't help it. Southern Pub, gone. Review and Herald, Pacific Press, fighting for their lives. And there are reasons. I don't think you really want to know what they are. I didn't write this. The book work should be the means of quickly giving the sacred light of ancient history to the world. The publications sent forth from our printing houses are to prepare a people. We've turned that inward and said, oh, it's preparing us. We're talking about preparing the world. To prepare a people to meet God. Throughout the world, they are to do the same work that was done by John the Baptist. How we pride ourselves, oh, we have the Elijah message. We're not preaching Elijah's message. The book work. There are hundreds of these statements. Our publications should go everywhere. Let them be issued in many languages. Third angel's message is to be given through this medium and through the living teacher. You believe the truth for this time, sleep on. It's your duty now. You see that? There are many places in which the voice of the minister cannot be heard, places which can be reached only by our publications. Let me tell you about one of them. A few years ago, I had the privilege of meeting Little Richard. You ever heard of Little Richard? Bebopalula and all that? Richard was about 15 years younger when I met him. We've talked off and on several times through the years. Richard's Seventh-day Adventist. Was brought up by a godly Seventh-day Adventist mother and went out and lived it up in the world. And one day the Spirit of God got hold of him again, and now he wants to. So Richard goes and he puts on his bebopping concerts for big money in front of big people and big crowds. And Richard says, so he starts buying our books. He buys thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of thousands and thousands and thousands of books. And one day Richard says, man, guys, I just don't have enough money to keep giving away all the books I need to give away. Okay, Richard? You just tell us what you need. You pay for what you can. We'll donate the rest. He said, Brother Charles, this is what I want. Folk come to my concerts. And if I stood still there, they'd line up by the thousands wanting me to sign my John Henry on. They want, So he said, I want you to print my picture and print my signature on it so I can put them in the books and everybody can have and I can put a book. Now, Richard's been doing this for years and years and years. He's almost too old to bebopalula anymore, but he still gets a bit of it in. Little Richard puts a book into the hands of people that are not coming to a SDA evangelistic meeting. They'll pay $100 to bebopalula, but they're not coming to an evangelistic meeting. You understand? We know not what may be the results of giving away a leaflet containing present truth. Well, we do know some of it. We know that C.D. Brooks was exposed to the message and became an Adventist minister and evangelist because a call porter in Chattanooga, Tennessee, called on his home when he was just a youngster and sold his mother a Bible readings for the home and one other book, which we believe was the Great Controversy. We're fast approaching the end. What should we be doing? The printing and circulation of the books and papers that contain truth for... See, this little lady is very consistent in her witness, her words. Very consistent. And it's so easy to use her and quote her, but not obey the instruction. It's so easy. I'm not going to read any more here. I will tell you that this is so important that when I get back to the office, I'm going to have these statements downloaded and come back to you in several pages. All right? People come to me and they talk about the health message. I'm agreed. It's important. So is the educational work. So is the medical line. So is. But she says it's all going to be closed up. I wonder what would close it down. Oh, it would be the horrid federal government. No, it's called... One other statement. I saw that as long as probation continued, there would be room for the canvasser to work, the printed page to go. You see, I went through the ministerial course, and I knew the history, a bit of the history of our publishing houses, and I knew something about canvassers and what they did and whatever. But in 1974, the Lord had two brethren known to me in the conference come to my home. And they drove up and they got out of the automobile. My wife and I were trying to build a little house that we live in at that time. And Brother Charles, take a break. We're impressed to tell you that the Lord has impressed us that you should be in the publishing work. I said, you got the wrong man. The conference president's asking me to come and choose one of 4 different districts right now. Brother Charles, all we can tell you is the Lord sent us to see you. And we're asking you to pray about this matter. That was an uh-oh moment. And I prayed about the matter, and you know what the Lord said? If you take that job with the conference office and take a district, you got a regular paycheck. But if you take this one, you're going to live by faith.
Amen.
I never had done that before. And the Lord said in no uncertain terms, this is what I want you to do.
Hallelujah.
And I did it.
Praise God.
And the things that followed are still a matter of recorded history in the entire movement of the denomination. And while I was learning from the ground up, because that's where God trains people, where they came from, out of the ground, okay? While I was learning from the ground up, my wife and our only child, my daughter, 5 years of age at the time, would get on our knees at the kitchen table and pray, Lord, show us how to get more books out.
Amen.
We've passed 44 million, guys.
Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Thank you, Jesus.
It's wonderful.
Hallelujah.
It's wonderful.
It's you can't write this script.
That's it.
You can't do it. Only God can write a script like this. Okay? Now, here's my point. This is Hillary and Obama's and Rahm Emanuel's crisis. It wasn't 2008. It's just ahead. This is just... And now this is not the Great Depression. That's over here. That's crisis number whatever. But this one is going to take the United States of America down economically. We're going to drag everyone else down with us. And the carrot that the globalists are going to dangle in front of the countries is sign on to this plan and we'll cancel your debt. That's the carrot. And there's a sucker born every minute. All right? It's going to be bad. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be difficult. You and I are going to see the value of property and the value of our money. Not to nothing, but next to nothing. All right? We're going to see the price of fuel and bread and everything. But there's going to be this period of struggling, and in this period, you can't even get a seat in church. Everybody's going to church. When trouble comes, everybody goes to church. Let's be good and say prayers. God will get us out of it. All right? And that's including Adventists. And then, you know, it's going to start looking a little bit better. and a little bit better, and a little bit better. And you know what happens? Next Sabbath and next Sunday, there's fewer people. And there's fewer people. And there's fewer people. Because you see, it's getting better. When it's better, you don't need to go to church. See? And this is what frightens me, and I'm just speaking candidly. Knowing human nature, knowing history, because I am a student of history. I had a double major in history and theology. This is the last opportunity we have before. Do you remember what Jesus said? Men, work while it is, because the... And here I greatly fear, as a people, we're going to do what people always do. Go to church and pray, and then when God gives you instruction, pay no attention. That's what I fear. We're here. I don't know if this is a day away, a week away, a month away, a year away, or what. I don't know. This crisis being the coming war with Iran. Okay? It's coming. That's Daniel chapter 8. And this is the one that shatters the horn and plucks the wings off the lion. Right here. When this happens, and it will, then this crisis will be upon us. I can only assume that this is the one that Ellen White has spoken of repeatedly, with never ever telling us exactly what the crisis is, but she says a crisis is coming, a storm is coming, a sudden and unlooked for calamity is coming. All right? And these things are going to frighten people, but frightened people are not the ones who usually stick with the work. It's wise people who recognize the signs of the times and understand what we are to do.